early 14th century. According to legend, Prince Sang Nila Utama and his entourage from Palembang are at sea. They struggle for life and death against a raging storm. Sang Nila Utama survived and came ashore at a place we now know as home. He discovered this island and called it Singapura. But this founding legend of Singapore raises various questions. Why was he on this journey in the first place? And what did he see on this island?
Sang Nila Utama is definitely the first of the Malay rulers, according to the Malay traditions. And he supposedly was the son of a prince from India and a princess who lived under the ocean. So Sang Nila Utama then became Sri Tribuana. So Sang Nila Utama is a Malay name, but he changed his name to Sanskrit later on, probably as a means of getting more prestige and getting better known internationally. We don't know exactly when he lived, but if we calculate based on the Chinese sources and the other Malay kings that are found in Malay tradition, he would have come to Singapore about 1299.
Archaeologist John Mixick, who has been researching the history of our little red dot, refers to the Malay Annals in trying to understand Sang Nila Utama's arrival in Singapore.
But in the story, he is just going hunting, and then he sees a deer and he spears the deer, and the deer actually leads him to the rock, as though he's meant to see Singapore with this beautiful white sandy beach. So it's like, again, the whole thing is actually fated to happen, that in Singapore was fated to become the first great Malay trading port.
According to the Malay Annals, written by a collection of writers in the 17th century, Sang Nila Utama climbed a rock and sighted the opposite shore. But the founding legend of Singapore brings about many questions. Why was Sang Nila Utama on a journey to Singapore? Was it the white shore and sands that attracted him to explore the island? What did he really see?
We haven't found any evidence of inhabitants in our excavations before about 1300. So at least that part of the story, again, can be confirmed by history that the first ruler probably only came here around 1300. We were digging up the Padang and digging up the 14th century layer, and lo and behold, the sand suddenly changed from black to this beautiful, pure white sandy material, very pure. So that whole stretch of the south coast of Singapore was white sand.
This theory seems to be supported by Professor Kwa, the strategic planning leader for the National Museum of Singapore.
The archaeological evidence since then, 1984, has uncovered that there was indeed a layer of white sand on the beaches of Singapore. Now, whether this was the beach that somebody, Sang Nila, whoever saw, we don't know. We are here into the realm of the social memories of the Malacca Sultans, what they have heard from their ancestors, and have incorporated into a narrative, a story of their beginnings and the origins of where they came from and how they came to be where they are.
While the story version of the hunting trip is widely accepted to explain why the prince was at sea, other theories evolved. The theories behind Sang Nila Utama's arrival to the island could well reach far beyond the hunting trip and white beaches. Scholar Dr. Sharil from the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies has extensive knowledge on the politics of this region. He offers a different perspective on Sang Nila Utama's expedition.
The main reason why Sang Nila Utama ended up on the boat was because he wanted to explore new areas to conquer. In fact, in the Sejarah Melayu, it was mentioned that he had this discussion with his mother, the queen, which actually was trying to discourage him from taking this journey. Yeah? But being a prince itself, there was this expectation by the community. So it happened that he was in this high rock when he looked across the sea and he saw this beautiful island with white sands, and he told his team that he wanted to explore this place, and he asked his team, the people around him, what is this place? And they said it's Temasek. And so, because it's the nature of a prince itself, that he wanted to know more about this island. That's why he took on this journey to Temasek.
Could the white sands alone have been a big enough motivation for the prince? Or did he embark on this trip out of boredom, as stated in the Malay Annals? Writer Eric Ng analyzes the theories presented within the Malay Annals with a skeptical mind.
The sail from Batam to Singapore is probably just 1 or 2 hours. If there was a storm, he would have seen it coming. Why did he run into the storm? If it was a mere hunting leisurely trip, surely he's not going to take the risk of going into the storm for a hunting trip. So that tells me that something is not quite right about the story. And if I go by the internal bias that I've discovered in the earlier chapters, I conclude that what they were trying to avoid is to avoid mentioning that they lost a war and that he was running away from a war, and that there were people chasing him and he had no choice but to sail into the storm.
Is it possible that Sang Nila Utama might not have been on an exploration expedition? Facing war and decline during his time, Sang Nila Utama could have been fighting to survive as he fled from war and entered his boat to escape his enemies. Facing the threat of capsize, legend says Sang Nila Utama tossed his crown into the raging waves as a gift to the gods to calm the elements. As the crown touched the waves, the storm abated, and the men were saved.
There are a lot of legends like this of kings who have to give up their crowns for supernatural reasons. The storm is obviously a symbol of something. It's not an actual just random thunderstorm that suddenly comes up, but instead it's probably due to the fact that he was actually forced to leave his previous kingdom and then came to Singapore, but he was no longer a legitimate king, so he had to establish himself again.
Whether there was an actual storm, we don't know. But in many other cases, the stories of the founding stories of Malay sultans, whether in Malaya or other parts of the what is Indonesia today, along the Sumatra coast, all have similar elements of the ancestors of the founding ruler having gone through a period of trials, of difficulties.
Upon his arrival on shore, Sang Nila Utama explored the beaches. According to legend, the prince caught sight of a creature in the trees. His sighting inspired the name of Singapura, Singapore, the Lion City. The legend of Sang Nila Utama's founding of Singapura is a story every school kid in Singapore knows. One of the biggest questions in the legend is the creature which inspired Sang Nila Utama to rename this island from Temasek to Singapore. The clue lies in the name, Lion City. There's just one problem. Dr. Leo Tan, one of the pioneers who set up the Singapore Science Centre and the Lee Kong Chian National Natural History Museum, has spent many years studying records of animals living in Southeast Asia.
As far as the record of mammals in whole of Southeast Asia goes, there's never been a record of a naturally occurring lion. The nearest lion we have is the Asiatic lion, and that is found in Gujarat, in India. It was a difficult time. He was running away, and when you are in a state of that kind of pressure, you can hallucinate also, and you can see things that are not there. And he saw a creature which to him appeared to be like a lion. But actually the only nearest big cat to a lion would have been a tiger at that time.
If it was not a lion, what did Sang Nila Utama see?
I doubt that he actually saw a real lion.
He see a deer. He saw a sea.
他以为是狮子，他以为啦，本来应该是老虎。
Sang Nila Utama sees a tiger. So if tiger in Malay is harimau, is harimau pura.
Like according to many reports in the past, it's more of a tiger rather than a lion. But back then, probably because lions live in savannas, and I don't think in the tropic regions of Southeast Asia we can actually have a lion that's naturally born. But I think according to the myth, right, it works. So that's why we are called the Lion City.
Could this pioneer event about Singapore appear even more inventive than their initial retelling? The Malay Annals state that Sang Nila Utama saw an animal of a beautiful red color, with a black head and a white chest. A creature that impresses Sang Nila Utama with its swift, elegant movements and great strength.
It doesn't even sound like a lion. It has a red body, a white breast, a black head. None of these colors are typical of lions. It doesn't say anything about having a mane or anything like a lion's mane.
If the lion theory is not supported by historical facts, it was unlikely that the prince saw an actual lion. Could another perspective give us more clues about the legend's roots? Eric believes that the storm at sea was the northeast monsoon. The identification of the storm Sang Nila Utama was facing could help to reorganize the pieces of this puzzle.
Northeast monsoon occurs around December. He had to stay in Temasek probably a month or so. And guess what? That is when we have Chinese New Year. And Chinese New Year is when we have the lion dance. If we interpret it that way, it makes sense. And because it makes sense, not just the lion, but the whole series of events, I think that's what he saw. He saw a Chinese lion dance. And I believe that the writer would write based on some real-life events or inspiration from real-life things that he has seen, and then he will modify it. He will modify it to suit his purpose, right? So if he has seen a lion dance, a Chinese lion dance, it is easy to imagine that he would have applied his creative license to say and change it from a Chinese lion dance to a lion in the forest. And secondly, the colors. The colors of the red body, the black head, and the white belly. I do not know of any other dance items or other myths with such colors for the animals.
Well, there are dances in Bali, which is done by a creature who is almost identical to a Chinese lion. It's called the barong there. And so it takes two men to dance it. One does the head and one does the rear end, just like a Chinese lion. But it's pretty likely that the dance was actually adopted from Chinese, specifically from a group of Chinese sailors who were shipwrecked on Bali. And so it took them like a month to fix their ship. And while they were fixing their ship, they would go out and do their Tai Chi in the morning. And the Balinese imitated that and turned it into a warrior dance.
The Indonesian barong dance, traditionally performed in gold and black, exhibit a dash of red, black and white. But does it fit the description found in the Malay Annals? While Chinese lion dance might seem to fit the description, was it possible for them to have appeared 4,000 kilometers away from China, and in the 14th century, and on Temasek?
It's an interesting theory, but unfortunately, there's no evidence for us to make that historical connection between a very Chinese dance form and what was happening in this part of the world in the 14th, 15th century here. Most societies tend to adopt an animal, a symbol, a mythological otherwise, as their symbol. So we are no different in that respect. The Southeast Asian societies, communities, rulers looked very much to the Indian kingdoms for inspiration of cultural forms, for ideas of statecraft and rulership. So in that sense, the Southeast Asian world is a very eclectic melting pot of the cultures of not only Hinduism in its various forms, Buddhism in its various schools, Islam, Chinese, all mixed in. So that's what Southeast Asia is.
The multicultural feature of Southeast Asia has been conserved, studied, and propagated over centuries of legends and development, influencing the lives of Singaporeans and beyond. The Yuan dynasty Chinese trader Wang Dayuan wrote in the 1330s that the Chinese had been living side by side with the locals on Long Yamen, or what we know as Temasek. Does this mean the Chinese had settled here earlier than once thought?
The first reference we get in Chinese sources is to Long Yamen, and that's about 1320. So clearly, Long Yamen was already known to the Chinese before 1320. So there's already some kind of established kingdom here by 1320. As if they could actually negotiate with to get these elephants from. So by 1330s, there were Chinese living here. When they first arrived, we don't know. Were they already here in 1320? We don't know.
We know that the name was Temasek when Sang Nila Utama arrived, which must mean that there is an existing town here, because Temasek in Javanese means sea town. So all this tells us that even before Sang Nila Utama built his city here, there was already a community. Now we know that when Wang Dayuan came, that was around 1330. He described two communities that he saw. Right? He described first the community around Empress Place, the area near to the mouth of the Singapore River, and he also described another community near to Long Yamen, which is around the Keppel Harbour area.
The Malay Annals mention an Indian king who conquered the peninsula and is said to have entered Temasek, looking for a way to get to China. Could these social memories be the historical evidence to back up the theories?
Could it be that when the Indian king came, the community that he visited was at the Keppel Harbour area? Could it be that when Sang Nila Utama arrived, the people that he saw was also at Keppel Harbour area, but he chose to build his city further up at the mouth of the Singapura River?
According to the Malacca Johor genealogy, Sang Nila Utama could have been king of Temasek from 1324 to 1372. His royal status was furthermore recognized by the Chinese emperor in 1366. Different historians may believe that Sang Nila Utama arrived in Temasek at different years. This variety of opinions raises questions about the historical evidence of Sang Nila Utama's reigning period in Temasek.
There's one chapter in the Malay Annals which talks about this Indian king coming to attack Southeast Asia. Why did he come to Singapore? He didn't attack anyone here. He came here, and it was recorded in the Malay Annals because he was looking for a way to go to China. And I asked myself, why would he come to Singapore, Temasek at that time, to look for a way to China, unless there was a Chinese community already here?
In order to follow up on historical evidence, Eric seeks an expert in the field. Could the Chinese lion dance theory be supported? And can we learn more about China's expansion and cultural influence in the 1300s? Mr. Kwa is a well-known expert in Chinese history in the Southeast Asia region. He is Eric's best bet at finding out if his own theory has historical backing.
一些史书说是在1324年，当然有一些说是更早。那么这个1324年差不多是等于中国的元朝时候。那中国的武士是开始于东汉，就是说在元朝之前的几个世纪，这个武士已经存在了。
Lion dance performance, which show resemblance of dances of today, can also be seen in the Song Dynasty painting 100 Children Playing in the Spring.
王代言是元朝的一个商人，他曾经在1330年的时候到过新加坡。那他在他的那本《岛屿志列》里面记载了当时他看到新加坡已经有一个华人的小聚落、村庄，跟一些当地的人，就是可能是马来人已经杂居了。如果是有华人的村落、华人的村庄的话，那舞狮的可能出现非常高。
The Malay Annals cover a period of over 600 years of historical literature. Its historical significance cannot be doubted. However, the events and speeches within the collection have been subject to varied interpretations by historians.
The main purpose of the Malay Annals was to try and legitimize the Malay rulers. Its basis is the genealogy of the Malay rulers. And so that's why it focuses on the individual kings. It doesn't tell you much about daily life. And so they claimed this kind of sequence right up until the Johor Riau period, the 1600s. And it was also supposed to be entertaining. It was supposed to be read aloud so people would listen to it. They wouldn't just read it, but they would actually go and listen to maybe public recitations of the Malay Annals. And so it had to have these kind of supernatural stories in it too, to make it fun to listen to.
Have the writers of the Malay Annals added color and embellishment to the historical events?
The Malay Annals should also be considered as a historical document because as it was written during that period, it was trying to reflect on the Malay society itself. It also reflects the kinds of teachings and religious orientations of the Malay community at that point of time, how they understand Islam, how they understand human rights, how they understand the social conditions at that point of time. These were all reflected in this historical document.
The Malay Annals tried not to mention the Chinese community in Palembang and in Temasek. And I believe it must be because this literature, this literary work was written for an audience. And that audience is the Malay king, or was the Malay king, and his court, full of his ministers. And I believe that's why he took this effort to stop talking about other communities and to focus on the Malay community. And I think that's perfectly normal and perfectly legitimate. But it's up to us in later generations in modern time to reinterpret that.
Some people accept the theory that Sang Nila Utama picked the lion as a cultural symbol for the island he turned into a state, which invoked the lion's universal and majestic attributes of courage, dignity, leadership, aristocracy, and strength.
Lions are always very good to have as part of one's mythology. And in that respect, we are not the only ones to be named after a lion. If you look around in Bali, there are a number of places, localities, historic sites that are named after lions. So in that sense, the lion is very much a sought-after symbol of Buddhism, of Hinduism. And people would then want to take on that symbolism.
Although great uncertainties cloud the Sang Nila Utama legend, this myth has helped to create an identity for modern Singapore.
Actually, I think the merlion is a really nice symbol. I really like the merlion. A lot of people think it's kitschy and so on, but I really like it, partly because it does look much like an ancient Malay and Javanese symbol. It fits in perfectly with what Singapore is trying to be. It's partly a land-based and partly a water-based culture. It owes a lot of its existence still today to the sea and to the shipping, the port activity, and so on. So fusing the kind of lion symbolism with the maritime symbolism, I think, couldn't have been better chosen.
新加坡我们俗称狮子城，那么狮子是万兽之王，代表了强壮、勇猛，而且很有机智。这也是等于是新加坡的一个建国的一个精神。
Whether it's a lion or it's not a lion is a different story. But I think what the animal that I saw was very swift, very quick, was actually a symbol of courage, a symbol of bravery. And this is what Sang Nila Utama associated that animal to be. And hence, whether it's a lion or not doesn't matter, at least the bravery, the courage that is embodied in the lion itself matters. And this is what is seen in Singapore today.
To my mind, the significance of the sighting of the lion is it symbolizes and represents our multicultural beginning. Yes, we may have the emblem of the lion, and now we know that lion emblem may not represent the real lion, but may represent this inspiration that Sang Nila Utama drew from when he saw this mixed community of Chinese people as well as the local Malays and other communities in Singapore at the time when he built Singapura. And I think that is where we should draw our inspiration from.
Theories about Singapore's founding legend remain debatable. Was it the weather that pushed Sang Nila Utama to come to shore after a hunting trip? Had he been on an expansion mission? Or was he escaping from some dire straits? Did he see a lion, a tiger? Was it a barong performance or a lion dance troupe? The historical community continues its search for an answer. But there is no doubt that Sang Nila Utama's significance to the country remains undebatable.
We have schools also named after Sang Nila Utama. So I think whether this man exists or not, most important thing is with the symbol that he represents, and it will also symbolize the direction that the country should be heading. Always there to discover new things on an exploratory mode, bravery, courage. These are associated not only with the lion, but also this figure by the name of Sang Nila Utama. And I think he is here to stay with us.
Ours has been a great journey in our hunt for the red lion. Now yours is an even greater journey to hunt for your multicultural roots. Perhaps somewhere on the island, buried under modern Singapore and washed over by centuries of history, lies the proof of what Sang Nila Utama really saw. Modern Singapura is built upon the people's trust and beloved identification with the lion and his greatest attributes as a symbol of a nation. The retelling of the founding legend will continue, whether the prince saw a lion or a tiger, or if a lion dance suggests that different cultures embraced one another much earlier in our history. We may never know for certain. What we do know is Singapore. Our lion city is real, and it roars.